So good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for your interest in Mutandis. I'm presenting now, I'm Adil Dwiri, I'm the CEO of the company and presenting the financial 2019 annual financials. The key messages I would like you to remember for this year was that it was a very good and satisfactory year for Mutandis, with higher sales and I guess a very good cost control. We witnessed strong growth in our home care business, mostly pulled by our own brands, which grew even faster than the overall category. We kept on shifting towards higher margin products in the seafood business, higher margin and higher markets, with the total volume that was about stable or slightly higher than the previous year, but suffered some weaker exchange rate conditions, which hampered a little bit the EBITDA increase in that specific category. In the bottle and cap business, we experienced significantly better margins, partially though offset by lower bottled water volumes due to fading 2018 boycott effect. The boycott affected a non-partner brand, so a competing brand basically. And finally, in the fruit juice category, we had a very strong 2019 in the domestic markets, but less so in the export market. So growth is very high, albeit from a low base. Some key facts about 2019. We were very proud, and it was quite an emotional moment for us when Magic's hand powder became for the first time ever the leading brand in the Moroccan market. We started 11 years ago with an almost non-existing brand called Magic's, which is the entry-level brand in the home care business. And after 11 years of hard work, we are now number one in the Moroccan market. The second thing to remember is that the liquids, and namely the surface cleaner, continued extending the range, and we have a commanding position. We're the co-leader with a multinational product in that category with about 30% market share. And so we continue to launch new specific perfumes and formulas that stick to the Moroccan consumer need. In the fruit juice business, we expanded to 2 new markets in Africa. Those are very small figures as of today, obviously, but it's really a long-term game, and we're planting more seeds in Western Africa. This year it was Ghana and Guinea which opened the first Marrakesh juice sales. In the skinless boneless sardine, as you may remember, 2019 is the launch of Josiane brand in Saudi Arabia in skinless boneless high margin products. So just early days, 150 stores, early launch, and again we have many hopes for that product in Saudi Arabia. Finally, in 2019, the Moroccan brand for the skinless, boneless, high-margin product was being tested only in modern trade, i.e. in supermarkets and hypermarkets. The brand is called Marine, as you remember. Great news is that we sent the first skinless, boneless samples to the US market. That's for the first time ever. It took us 2 years of trying to find a route to market and to the consumer, and the first samples will be were sent basically to Costco Wholesale Club, which is the huge cash and carry chain in the US. So many achievements for 2019 thanks to the efforts of the whole team and the very good job by the CEOs of the various divisions. If we look at financials, we had solid growth really on all metrics. Record revenues were up 7% about at 1,462 million dirhams, pulled again by Homecare, which was up 14%, I guess, and fruit juices, which were up about 19%. EBITDA reached a record level, and I want to state that this is the 7th consecutive year of growth of EBITDA for Mutandis. So for the 7th time, EBITDA is higher than last year. EBITDA was up about 12% at 228 million dirham. When I say 12%, that is on comparable figures because IFRS 16 was implemented for the first time and it has a positive effect on EBITDA, but we did compare to a 2018 pro forma EBITDA using IFRS 16 as if it had been already in place in 2018, which is not mandatory, but we insisted on doing it so that we have more comparable figures. If you look at net income, excluding one-offs, excluding non-recurring items, net income was up strongly, 21% growth versus 2018, reaching 93 million dirhams. That's basically a combination of the higher revenues, stable to slightly higher margins on variable costs, stable fixed costs, so we have an operating leverage on the fixed costs, and then lower cost of debt due to the IPO capital increase, and also higher amortization due to more capex and more investments. That leads us to a nice leverage and growing net income at a 21% clip. If we take net income including one-offs, i.e. non-recurring items, it was also up about 17% versus 2018. If we look at the balance sheet and the cash flows, the key message is that we have strong cash flows, higher cash flows than last year, but a still under leverage balance sheet as the capital increase from the IPO reduced our debt level, and we did not spend enough in capex in 2019 for the new categories that we plan to launch. So the debt remained a little bit low versus compared to our long-term target. So bank debt was stable at around 20% of total capital. And cash flow from operation was about 150 million dirhams, up 20% versus 2018. Given the very strong or too strong balance sheet that we have, given the level of cash flow that we are now reaching, we have decided to propose to the AGM, to the shareholders, an increase in the dividend per share, as we, for the last 4 years, we had been paying 7.5 dirhams per share, and we will be proposing to the AGM on April 2nd, we will be proposing 8.5 dirham per share dividend, which is a plus 13% increase in dividend per share. Our financial indicators, our metrics in 2019 were all in line with the guidance we had provided in February 2019, i.e. a year ago. The guidance was 6 to 8% in revenues, and actual figure was 6.8%. We didn't do that on purpose. EBITDA, the guidance was about up 10%, and the actual figure is up 11.7%. Recurring net income guidance was like between plus 15 to plus 25%, and the actual figure was plus 21, and cash flow from operations was up 21% for the year, as I previously mentioned. If we go to single categories, I would like to take you to slide 13 for those of you who are looking at our slideshow at the same time. So on slide 13, we start with the home care business. Revenues up 14%, EBITDA up 16%, and excuse me. And if I look at own brands revenues, they were up even at a higher clip since they were up 16%, whereas total revenues are up 14%. The strong growth is mostly due to a better distribution, enlarged route to market, more investment in our truck fleet. It's also due to the shift from the big bag sale per weight to the smaller, more urban 1 kilogram format, which allowed us to enter the cities and to be stronger in the major urban centers, and also slightly higher liquid sales with high market shares. That was obviously offset by more marketing spend to shift to the 1 kilo and gain our market share in the 1 kilo format, and also more investment in the distribution, as I previously mentioned. The investment in the sales force, in the truck fleets and the sales guys, was motivated by the launch of Marrakesh a year before, but also motivated by the seek for a wider geographical reach. As you may remember, that we only reach maybe a little bit less than 40,000 point of sales in mom and pop convenience stores, whereas Morocco is like 70, 80,000 point of sales. So we only reach maybe half of the total number of point of sales we should be reaching over the long run. The seafood business was slightly higher in revenues, up 2%, but EBITDA was lower by 6%, and that was really mostly due to adverse exchange rate, a much weaker euros. We had no hedge on the euro, and this year we sold much more to euro-denominated markets than to US dollar-denominated market. So with a strong Moroccan dirham, a weak euro, we've been a little bit penalized at EBITDA level by that weaker euro. Also, the reason why we are slightly lower in EBITDA, minus 6%, despite our shift to higher margin skinless, boneless products, is also because we were a little bit late in all our planning, commercial planning, in terms of shipping to the USA, which was a key target for 2019, and also launching Josiane Skinless Boneless in Saudi Arabia. They did both start, indeed, in 2019, but they started quite late in the year, at least 6 months later than what we were hoping for. We did our best, but we were a little bit late. So that will have positive effects in the coming years, but for 2019, EBITDA is slightly lower in the seafood business. I want to stress that in the seafood business we'll also have more positive effects from fixed cost reduction, which has started already due to organizational change and a slightly more focused, more concentrated management team. We are also improving the factories. Cost efficiencies in the factories and energy cost, that is also improving the margin, and that will show even more if the euro if the euro stops declining against the Moroccan dirham. The bottle and cap business had a fantastic year in terms of margin, as EBITDA was up 20% when revenues were basically flat. You remember in that business that revenues are mostly indexed on PET prices, so revenues is not really a good indicator for that division, because if PET prices are higher, then revenues are higher, and lower, and also the contrary. But volumes were slightly down, about 4% down in volumes, because the boycott that affected a competing brand in 2018 started fading in 2019. So all bottled waters brands we work with had a slightly lower 2019 after an incredibly strong 2018 year. So all in all, slightly lower volumes, stable revenues, and sharply higher EBITDA with better margins, better negotiations in a couple of major contracts. Fruit juice business, you remember, is a startup. It's the baby in the stable of categories at Mutandis. It's the fantastic brand name of Marrakesh that we did acquire in 2017. So it's only like year 2.5 since we're running this category. And sales in Morocco were up in a very strong manner, up 33% for domestic sales in Morocco. Sales with the national airlines were up 19%. Export sales were down some 30% on small figures. So all in all, the category is up 19%. But remember that domestic Moroccan sales of own brand, which is the key KPI, is up 33%, albeit from small figures, since it's just a nation business, and it's a very long-term game too that we are playing here. EBITDA more than doubled due to the operating leverage on fixed cost, but again from a low base. If we look quickly at net debt, as I mentioned, bank net debt and not total net debt, because total net debt now, due to IFRS 16, includes also the future value of the leases. So if we look only at real bank net debt, then it's slightly up. It's stable from 237 beginning of the year to 241 million dirham at the end of the year. Cash flow, real cash flow was up 130%, excluding IFRS 16 effect. Capex were 73 million, dividend 61 million. So that left the debt at a constant level. And again, the gearing of 20% is not a reasonable gearing. Our target is to have maybe 35% gearing, i.e. 1/3 of total capital in net debt and 2/3 in equity. Again, as I just mentioned, capex were about 73 million dirhams in 2019 versus 59, so a 23% increase in capex. But really, we did not spend the big money and big ticket we planned to spend after the IPO, because number one, we're still conducting the marketing field studies to make sure we launch the right product for the consumer and the right brand. And second, because we were bidding for a P&G factory in Morocco, and it seems that we won't be making that acquisition, unfortunately. So we'll be now spending differently to build or acquire additional factories during 2020 and 2021. If we provide you for the first time with our marketing figures, which is quite a sensitive figure, so marketing spend is up 30% in 2019 versus 2018. This is due to the fruit juice business, where we're pushing the Marrakesh brand and market share gain in order to give it its previous luster of 20 years, 30 years ago. But it's also due to the shift to the 1 kilo from the big bag. We were the king of the 10 kilo big bag, and then the 10 kilos started declining, so we had to accommodate and shift to the more urban 1 kilo, as you remember. That's a bit costly in terms of marketing spend, but it proved to be hugely successful. As I mentioned, we're now number one in the hand washing powder in Morocco. Finally, 2020 guidance. 2020 guidance is a little bit like 2019, is a pursuit of the growth, while we will be spending more in capex and investment in order to prepare for the product and category launches that we had mentioned during IPO and IPO roadshows. So we would expect revenues to be up at the same clip as this year, i.e. about 6 to 7%, with a positive contribution from all categories. We'll be launching a new subcategory in the home care business, where we have never been playing significantly before. I'll come back to it shortly. And we will also be launching Marine in Morocco. National launch after the test. The test was supermarket, hypermarkets, but the national launch in our truck, in our fleet sales, with the mom and pop businesses, with advertising, marketing support will be in 2020. And again, we'll pursue our push on the fruit juice to try and reach our natural market share, which is something between 15 to 20% market share, whereas we started with a brand that had declined down to maybe 5%. Market share. So we're gaining market share year after year to give it back, to give it its previous share, and which is our natural market share in Morocco. EBITDA should be up about 8% due to favorable leverage on fixed costs. We'll make sure, guys, we'll be very strict on fixed costs, but we still need to invest in the fleet truck and in the sales force to continue enlarging our reach, our route to market, and reaching more and more point of sales, mom and pop convenience stores that we call épicerie in Morocco. And then capex should be around 80 million dirhams. So again, higher than this year, maybe 10-15% higher, with the first capex on the future categories of products. Finally, we expect recurring net income. We expect recurring net income to be up between plus 10 and plus 13% in 2020, which, if we achieve our target, would allow us to pass the 100 million dirhams mark in a recurring net income. 2019 was 93 million, as you remember. Okay, if we look at the next episodes or the next seasons of our story, the skinless boneless will be launched first time in the USA, hopefully, fingers crossed. You remember we sent samples to Costco Wholesale Club and expect that to be translated into a permanent long-term business in the USA in skinless boneless. We will be, as I mentioned, launching for the first time the machine powder. We are now number one in the hand powder, but we are absolutely nowhere in the machine powder. So we'll be launching a range of new products for machines in 2020, probably by May or June. Marine, the skinless boneless for Morocco, will be launched either in July, which is a target, or by late summer in Morocco with national advertising. We pin high hopes on the skinless boneless in Morocco because it will be a category that does not exist. We'll be building the category, which is in between the traditional sardine and the tuna can. And finally, if we stretch our horizon to 2021 included, then probably the fish paste will be ready to be launched in the coming 18 months or so, and that will be a major driver to EBITDA too, because it will allow us to transform the fish that usually we resell because it's not suitable for cans. This is basically our annual 2019 achievements, and also the outlook for 2020, and even some launches for 2021. You have our corporate calendar that's available on our website, and our next, we'll have a general meeting in the 2nd of April. And our next financial release will be the first quarter achievements, KPIs, and that will be on the 4th of May. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email us and get in touch with us. I wish you a very good day to all of you. Thanks.